let's not get too ahead of ourselves, eh? So, for those new around here, this is the back of a 75 dashboard, and this is the ignition connector. And this is what it shouldn't look like. As you can see, this has seen a little bit more current than it anticipated, and has burnt out one pin definitely, and there's another pin there which clearly took some clout too. Luckily, I found these just off eBay. I think it was like a £6 part, you know, for a connector. That seems pretty pricey, I guess, but it does come with all 9 pins, both male and female, so not going to complain. It's the exact connector, just to fit onto and replace what I've managed to melt by poorly wiring the engine. This was after I rebuilt the engine, refitted, and in my haste to get it started and running again, I essentially put a heat terminal on the wrong side of the battery and fried it. So here you can see all of the pins that come with. For anyone also looking to replace this connector, it is a Tyco Mate and Lock 9-pin connector. Essentially, it's like a 9-pin connector of 9 mini bullet connectors. They all push together like this, make a nice contact, and you can see they've got these little flares, which are like barbs on them. So once they are crimped to the wire, you would push them into the connector itself, and those barbs hold it in place. So first job on the agenda is try and get these out of this connector. Obviously easier said than done, especially with that melted pin there. Obviously I've got no desire to keep this connector, so not too careful with it, but I do need to keep the orientation, so all the wires in each of the connector holes need to correspond on the new connector. So this is just me studying the barbs once again to see if I can figure out how to pick these things open. I swear picking locks is easier than this. So I got these tweezers, just like snipe nose tweezers. There's the first one out. So before I forget where that goes, quick sanity check. It goes across to So obviously need to bend those barbs back out that I've just pushed in, so that they'll latch in, so that when I push the connector together, it doesn't just push the mini bullet straight back out the side. There we go. You can see I have a lot of faith in my memory here, just triple checking. And with any luck, there we go. 1 pin down. I believe there's 7 in this 9-pin connector that are in use, so here goes nothing. Obviously I've sped this bit up because you don't need to see me struggling to pick these things out over and over again at a normal pace. I hate to think how long this took just to do one connector. And this is only one side of it, don't forget, this is the dashboard side. Obviously the dashboard isn't in the car, it's in my garage. But once I've got this side done, there'll be a little bit of a wait before I can do the other side, because on taking the dash out, I found some new speed holes in the firewall, which need to be taken care of before this goes back in. And you know, I've had this dashboard out. This is probably the 3rd time now, and I really don't want to do it a 4th time, if I'm honest. It's a bit of a pain. When I go to put it back in, I will be sure to set the camera up so you can, in case anyone's curious, this black wire actually goes off under the engine bay to a power connection bar of the driver's side in a right-hand drive car, which usually houses things like, I think on the 2 litre at least, maybe on the 3 litre as well. I'd have to go out and check. the fuel pressure regulator sits on here. Also the main power point for the starter itself, which essentially comes back to this black cable, then runs all the way under the dash to your ignition key, so that when you go to the second stage, it would energize that cable, create a circuit from the battery essentially, round to the starter solenoid. The starter solenoid throws a gear into the ring gear of the flywheel, and simultaneously creates a connection with the battery to the starter itself via a much larger cable, which obviously turns the engine over. So as you can see from the rather funky looking installation on this black cable, it is definitely due for a replacement. So I'm just cutting this out here. In case you're wondering, that's a continuity test on a multimeter. I'm just looking to find where this pink and white cable ends up, because there are a number of them and some of them are the same gauge as well, so just looking to test to see where it ends. So that mustn't have been the one. There's a few more here, pink and white, obviously a favourite flavour. I don't actually know what this pin goes to. I know that it also goes underneath the bonnet, so it's through the firewall, but I'm not exactly sure. So that looks pretty good. So we've got continuity through it. This one didn't look anywhere near as bad, and the other end of the cable at that connector looks fine. So with that in mind, and the installation is still intact, what I'll do is I'll re-terminate this into a new mini spade and into the connector. That should save me going and purchasing every flavour of wire for when I need to replace stuff, because I'd really rather not replace any wires with different colours if I can help it. There's just the other end of the black cable, you can see is all melted. Don't really want to leave that in the loom. Nobody needs any additional fire hazards with an older car. So here we go. This is continuity testing the existing black cable, but I've got no inclination to keep that, so let's unpick that. I already have some wire of similar, if not the same gauge. I think it's actually slightly higher grade, as in the core, slightly thicker in cross section. Although my anticipation going forward is to have a much lower current across this, because I'll be replacing what was essentially a direct circuit through to the starter solenoid from the ignition, and this will just be carrying a low current signal essentially to a relay, which then trip the much higher current of the solenoid tripping or actuating. So this won't see anywhere near as much current. It probably doesn't need to be anywhere near as thick as this either now, but just in case plans change, I am going to fit this with the correct gauge of wire. So bear with me. This is the first time I've used these crimps. They're nothing special. They are uninsulated terminal crimps. From what I could gather, there's two main variants. One is insulated, one is non-insulated, and obviously there's different sizings. With a bit of cocking around here, I could see that these terminals, you could terminate the contactor side, which is the bit the wire touches, with the middle gauge, and then the outer part, which crimps around the insulation, in the larger. So perfectly matched up with these connectors, and there's the first one done. Happy days. Well, I did manage to bend it a little bit, but yeah, just bend that back, it'd be fine. Straighten her up, nice flaring, ready to latch into that connector, ready to fight another day. unlike that one, which is very much spent. Happy days. One more to do in this end. Trying my best to get a nice clean finish on these things. No stray wires or, you know, braids of the cable sticking out. There we go. And there we have it. 7 pins of a 9-pin connector all wired up. Lovely clean terminal block. Ready to do the other side once I can get to it. And there's actually some extra barbs on these things that you can really make out from that. But they essentially just hold it into a panel under the dash. I'll show that when we get to the other end. So, since I had it to hand, a bit of terminal cleaner, just to clean a few things up whilst it's here by the bench. But there we have it. Nice clean connector. One baked old one. There we go. Onwards and upwards.